I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, a dire warning from the president about the coming days in Iraq.
We can expect more American and Iraqi casualties.
Also tonight, the United States could soon lose a key weapon in the war on terror.
This is the kind of program that quite literally would have averted 9/11.
And what drove him to say this?
I'm New Jersey Governor John Corzine, and I should be dead.
And what other well-known names are not buckling up?
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. The American public has never been more pessimistic about the war in Iraq than it is tonight. A CBS News New York Times poll is just out, and 76% of respondents believe the war is going badly. That's the highest number since we started asking that question 4 years ago. Tonight, the House voted 280 to 142 to provide more funding for the war without a timetable for troop withdrawal, and sent the measure to the Senate for approval there. Meanwhile, the president warned today the war is going to get worse before it gets better. Jim Axelrod at the White House begins our coverage.
With public pessimism spiking on Iraq, while the troops continue the surge into Baghdad, President Bush warned of a violent summer.
It could be a very difficult August, and I fully understand.
72% of Americans now disapprove of the president's handling of Iraq, according to the latest CBS News New York Times poll. 72% also say the country's on the wrong track, the highest number ever since the poll started asking that question in 1983. The president says it's too soon to tell if his plan will secure Iraq, that September will be the time to judge, when his commander in Iraq makes a formal report that will help determine how to proceed. But that sets up a timetable for terrorists.
Doesn't setting up the September date give the enemy exactly what you've said you don't want them to have, which is a date to focus on? And doesn't it guarantee a bloody August?
It does. It's precisely. It could make August a tough month. Because you see, what they're going to try to do is kill as many innocent people as they can to try to influence the debate here at home.
Resolute as he appears, the president hinted strongly at a backup plan B, modeled on last year's Baker-Hamilton report. It would call for more regional diplomatic contact, as well as a drawdown and repurposing of U.S. troops away from policing sectarian violence. This is the same plan he largely ignored when it was first published last December.
As I have constantly made clear, the recommendations of Baker-Hamilton appealed to me. And that is to be embedded and to train and to guard the territorial integrity of the country and to have special forces to chase down al-Qaeda.
Unlike most news conferences that cover many subjects, 2/3 of today's questions were on Iraq and the war on terror, including some he's never been able to give a satisfying answer to. Like, why is Osama bin Laden still at large?
Why is he at large? Because we hadn't got him yet. That's why he's still at large. He's not out there traipsing around. He's not leading many parades, however.
If anyone's wondering when the president would implement a Plan B for Iraq, you could argue the first steps are underway right now. This Monday, the American and Iranian ambassadors will meet for the first time for extended one-on-one, face-to-face talks about stabilizing Iraq. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, the White House.
Now, more Americans than ever, 61%, say going to war in Iraq was a bad idea. But the president insisted again today it was the right thing to do. Our chief political correspondent, Jeff Greenfield, has a reality check tonight.
It is the key premise behind the president's Iraq approach, that we fight them there so that we will not fight them here.
The danger in this particular theater in the war on terror is that if we were to fail, they'd come and get us.
The president has made this argument dozens of times over the years, and it was at the heart of a Republican campaign ad last fall. But is it a legitimate fear? Would the people fighting U.S. forces in Iraq somehow find their way to our shores?
Anything is possible, and the motive is still there, I think, but the capability isn't.
Jim Hogue, editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, is one of the many analysts who suggest such a scenario is doubtful. It's like in the Vietnam era, when they said we'd be fighting communists in San Diego if we pulled out, says John Mueller, an Ohio State National Security Studies professor. It is a preposterous argument, he says. And James J. Carafano, a Homeland Security and counterterrorism expert for the Conservative Heritage Foundation, says the president is using a primitive, inarticulate argument that leaves him open to criticism and caricature. But while there is widespread agreement that most of the violence in Iraq is homegrown, many of these same analysts do believe that the al-Qaeda presence there does pose a threat to other nations in the region.
What's much more likely is that they will go after soft targets in places like the Middle East, Africa, maybe even Europe.
And what of the president's other argument, that the attacks in Iraq are aimed at undermining support for the policy here at home?
It's all terrorists try to play to the press because they have two objectives. One is to promote their own cause, and the other is to demoralize potential opponents.
The argument that we fight them there so we don't fight them here may have political clout, but it also represents a striking retreat from the original case for the war.
Gone are the assertions that a democratic, peaceful Iraq would spread liberty and stability throughout the region. Instead of arguing for the good things that would happen if America were to act, the argument now seems to be based on the dreadful things that would happen if America leaves. Jeff Greenfield, CBS News, New York.
Meanwhile, in Iraq today, the U.S. military confirmed that a body found yesterday south of Baghdad is that of an American soldier. Private Joseph Anzac was 20 years old from Torrance, California. He was one of 3 soldiers kidnapped after a deadly ambush on May 12th. And today, thousands of U.S. and Iraqi troops pressed on with their search for his missing comrades. Turning overseas now, there's a manhunt on in Britain tonight for 3 men suspected of planning terror attacks outside that country. They were under house arrest in London, but disappeared on Monday. Here in the States, catching suspects like that depends on getting the very best intelligence. But the Homeland Security Secretary is worried that European allies may be letting down their guard. Here's our justice correspondent, Bob Orr.
When Mohammed Atta and his fellow hijacker showed up at U.S. airports the morning of 9/11, airport security officials had no information identifying the men as terrorists. No reason to stop them from boarding the airplanes. They would soon turn into weapons. Right. Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff says a similar style attack would now be prevented. Even 9/11, he says, could have been stopped if the U.S. had had access to more revealing passenger information.
You're saying if you use the kind of data points that you now look at in 2001, you could have identified more than half the hijackers?
That's right. We would have rapidly discovered the fact that there were connections among at least 11 of the 19 hijackers with terrorists, including terrorist financiers. And one of the people we would have identified as a threat was Mohammed Atta. So if you imagine that we could replay history and take our current program and take it back to 2001, this is the kind of program that quite literally would have averted 9/11.
Since 9/11, the U.S. has successfully pressed foreign countries to turn over in-depth passenger data. In addition to names, birth dates, addresses, and frequent flyer numbers, U.S. officials now are also analyzing credit card, phone, and travel records, looking for any information that may link incoming passengers to known or even suspected terror cells.
The current information sharing agreement with Europe runs out in July, and some allies would like to kill the deal, citing passengers' privacy rights. U.S. officials, though, argue the terror threat has never been more urgent.
British intelligence agents are tracking 2,000 suspected terrorists and dozens of plots inside the UK. And that threat is just one flight removed from the United States. A passenger from Europe can travel here with only a passport, without having to be cleared by a visa investigation. Terrorists from these so-called visa waiver countries have already exploited that loophole to plan attacks against the United States. These surveillance pictures of New York financial firms were taken by this al-Qaeda agent who traveled unimpeded to America on a British passport. Another al-Qaeda operative, Richard Reed, used his British passport to carry his shoe bomb aboard a U.S.-bound jetliner. And just this week, British authorities admitted they've lost track of these 3 terror suspects who may be traveling abroad.
What this means is that al-Qaeda doesn't necessarily need to have the same kind of robust network of terrorists in the United States that they may already have in the United Kingdom or other European countries. They can insert their operatives from abroad into the U.S. precisely because they have the right kind of passport.
Chertoff has been making that case to European allies, taking a hard line.
And one thing I've made very clear from the outset is we're not going to outsource the decision-making on our national security.
With or without an extension of the information-sharing deal, the U.S. will continue demanding the data from airlines before international flights can land here. 9/11 proved there is no other safe option. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
And tonight there is a new 9/11 death toll. The New York City Medical Examiner has added Felicia Dunn Jones to the list of victims. The 42-year-old attorney was caught in the dust of the collapsing World Trade Center and died 5 months later of a lung disease. This is the first death officially linked to the dust at Ground Zero, and that may have major ramifications because thousands of people claim they got sick from that same toxic dust. Now to the presidential campaign and a big change in the race for the Democratic nomination. Our new poll tonight finds Hillary Clinton has now opened a 22-point lead over Barack Obama. That's 7 points greater than last month. John Edwards' support has fallen, meanwhile, to 14%. There is much more CBS News ahead. Coming up next, his dramatic plea to all of us to avoid making the same mistake he made, a mistake that almost cost him his life. As we approach Memorial Day and the summer driving season, the federal government is kicking off a nationwide effort to get more Americans to buckle up. And tonight, the campaign includes a plea from someone who didn't. Nancy Cordes reports.
I'm New Jersey Governor John Corzine, and I should be dead.
It's a dramatic message from New Jersey's governor, whose failure to wear a seatbelt one day last month left him with more than a dozen broken bones. He taped this public service announcement just in time for the congested Memorial Day weekend.
I have to live with my mistake. You don't. Buckle up.
But change the channel. It's unlikely you'll find many folks following his advice.
You have to stay with them, please.
Not the contestants on Amazing Race.
Love somebody and they don't love you back.
Not the bachelorettes who fail to get a rose. Even the cops on CSI routinely break the law.
So when you're sitting at home on the couch watching 24, watching The Amazing Race, watching some of these other shows and see people without belts, it just really tweaks you, it irks you.
A recent study of the nation's top 20 shows found TV characters only buckle up 62% of the time, compared to 82% of ordinary Americans.
Making a character take 10 seconds to put on a seatbelt sort of takes you out of the moment, if you will, the cinematic moment.
Susanna Gora is an entertainment journalist.
It's almost like asking Rambo if he flossed that morning.
But nothing counts more in life.
Corzine's not the only politician taking heat for his habits. The White House press corps wants to know why President Bush won't buckle up when he's tooling around his Texas compound. It's not illegal, he's on private property, but still.
Well, it's always important to wear seatbelts, especially when driving slowly on the ranch.
That's a lesson one of the Sopranos learned the hard way this month.
He wasn't wearing a belt.
Nancy Cordes, CBS News, New York.
Now an update on those wayward whales who are lost and injured in California. Tonight, they're still more than 70 miles from the ocean in the Sacramento River near the Rio Vista Bridge. Last night, scientists played underwater recordings of killer whales to try to scare them back toward the ocean, but that didn't work. Tomorrow, they plan to use fire hoses from boats to get the whales moving. Coming up next, while he was healthy, he thought he was covered by health insurance. When he got sick, he found out just how uncovered he was. You may have health insurance, but if you get sick, are you really covered? Congress today opened an investigation of two providers of long-term care insurance, Conseco and Penn Treaty American, for denying an unusually high number of insurance claims. Then there are the roughly 16 million people who have individual health insurance policies. Many of them say they're not getting paid when they put in a claim. Here's CBS News investigative correspondent Armin Katayan.
Yeah, girl.
Walking along this stretch of road last summer, 54-year-old Todd Smith felt an intense burning in his chest and tightness in his arm, signs of a heart attack he never saw coming.
I was in good health, no major health problems or conditions.
For Smith, an illustrator of children's books, his heart attack was the first shock. The second, more than $40,000 in medical bills his insurance company refused to cover. And a 2-month CBS News investigation of the individual insurance market found that Smith's experience was far from unique.
I certainly figured that a heart attack was a catastrophic event, so I figured I was covered.
Because it was expensive, his claim was investigated for fraud by Assurant Health, his insurance company. After examining his medical records, the company refused to pay based on this 3-year-old reference to an angina episode. Assurant said those words proved his condition was pre-existing, despite the fact that follow-up tests ruled out a heart condition. He suffered instead from acid reflux.
So you have a doctor saying Mr. Smith did not have any sort of cardiac-related illness?
Nothing that they could find. Yeah. Yep.
And Assurant's reaction to this has been what?
Just to ignore it.
The claim about these pre-existing conditions was absolutely preposterous.
Connecticut Attorney General Richard Blumenthal's office has investigated dozens of the more than 500 complaints nationwide against Assurant, a Milwaukee-based company that specializes in individual policies. Blumenthal charges Assurant has a pattern of bad faith when it comes to its customers.
What the company did was create the illusion of coverage, when in reality, it would challenge almost any expensive procedure as a pre-existing condition.
While insurers are allowed to review medical records to weed out fraud, our investigation of Assurant found a pattern of questionably denied claims and canceled policies, and what a South Carolina judge called a culture of secrecy, concealment, and shredded documents.
There were times when I wasn't quite comfortable with the decision.
Diane Witkowski is a former supervisor of a unit at Assurant that searched for reasons to not pay claims. She told us she quit because she believed many of the investigations were unfounded and unjust.
A lot of times we felt that we had it all, and to just try and keep looking just was frustrating.
Assurant refused to speak with us on camera, but it issued this statement, saying they continually evaluate their claims process to ensure it is fair, equitable, and consistent with state laws and industry standards. But at least 15 states have investigated Assurant's practices, forcing the company to pay millions of dollars in fines. It now faces dozens of customer lawsuits, with another on the way from Todd Smith.
What do you think this is all about?
I think it's about money. You know, that's the bottom line.
Smith hopes his legal action will cover that $40,000 bill. He felt assured his insurance company would pay. Armin Katayan, CBS News, Rocky Hill, Connecticut.
And coming up next, being there when you're really someplace else. Hollywood helps take the teleconference to the next level. Standard video conferencing, it's so last century, but we have seen the technology of the future, and it's almost like being there without having to say, beam me up, Scotty. Here's John Blackstone.
For the filmmakers launching the latest Shrek movie.
I think that went pretty well.
Taking a meeting has taken on new meaning.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
I love that.
It's video conferencing as never seen before.
Well, this is an interesting way to meet.
Movie mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg helped Hewlett-Packard design the $350,000 multi-screen system.
It's not all smoke and mirrors.
So filmmakers across the globe can meet face-to-face.
To be able to see the detail on your face, your expressions, that you're understanding and connecting with what I say, you know, that is part of how we as human beings communicate.
Hey, Chef, you there?
Yes.
Are you ready?
We're ready, Chef.
Celebrity chef Thomas Keller supervises his New York restaurant, Per Se, from his kitchen in California's Napa Valley.
I want you guys to try that over in New York and see what you think, okay? Give me some feedback.
Then there is Margaret Hushman, a 21st century video commuter.
Love you. Hey. See ya. Bye, babe.
After she takes her daughter to school in Texas, she reports to work via video conference to her cubicle in California.
People, you know, act as if I'm there. I mean, they really feel it. And actually, I'm so focused on what's going on there that I forget I'm in Texas.
She works for Cisco, maker of an $80,000 single-screen system. It's so real, people seem to forget Margaret is 1,800 miles away.
Morning.
How you doing?
I brought you a Starbucks.
Oh!
Hey! Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, Margaret. Thanks for joining us.
Margaret became an early user of the technology when she moved from California to Texas, and her boss, Martin DeBeer, didn't want to lose her.
I can see her through the window when I sit at my desk.
She manages Martin's workload as if she's right next door,
This is Margaret.
with him hardly noticing she's half a continent away.
He's in a meeting right now. Can I take a message?
There must be things you can't do for Martin from here.
I can't get him his coffee, which I think is a step in the right direction.
For business people who've long wished they could be in two places at once, technology is making that almost a reality. The cost may be high, but for big companies, the savings in air tickets from here to here can make the system almost pay for itself. John Blackstone, CBS News, Glendale and Palo Alto, California.
And that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
CBS News. See it now, anytime, anywhere.